Welcome to Conversations with Catholics. My name is Kevin, non-Tradicath, and I am joined today by Daniel for the third time. Daniel, welcome back, and you are my second guest, I think, to be on the show 3 times. My first guest since episode, 4 or something like that. You are making records for being on the show for the most number of times. So welcome back, Daniel.
Wow, but I'm tied.
I think so. But
Yeah.
you know,
Well, we'll
hey,
have to do a fourth.
exactly.
Sign me up
And
for a fourth because I want to be the record holder. I'm
okay,
off to such a
okay.
good start, right?
Hey, I absolutely, and I think you probably are already the record holder in terms of hours because our talks tend to go a little bit longer than the average. I try to keep them to like an hour and 15. I think our shortest one was like an hour and 45 or something like that. So I think that you're already winning in terms of pure hours, but we'll get you winning in terms of number of appearances as well. Don't worry, we'll take care of you.
Oh my, yeah. So I really have no concept of time. I famously have no concept of time, and my theory of I don't even know what is my theory of just sort of my the what brings me peace, where I find peace is in structuring my life such that my philosophy is that every event that I enter into in my mind is an eternal event. So I never do anything. Well, I do practically. It's like it's like my uh, perhaps my analog to your fictional nominalism or nominal fictional, whatever that concept you have, where you sort of have to engage on a, you sort of have to have this common level of engagement. But if I could just live as a hermit, an official hermit, because I sort of do live as a hermit, but if
I
I
feel like
could
a hermit
live,
sometimes.
yeah, if I could live as a hermit, I think just my ideal mode of existence would be to just float from one event to the other, but the events don't really have a conclusion point in my mind. They just sort of naturally fade away, and then the next moment begins for me. So um, that is why I sort of go. If you don't pull the plug on me, we could probably just talk for five
You know
hours.
what I do, which is it's kind of the same, but it's also kind of the opposite. Is that I like my job is so I'm a project manager, and so I'm managing like a million different tasks, and so my general rule of thumb is kind of like just if it's a task that takes less than 15 minutes, just do it now. And so I kind of live
Yeah.
my life in these 15-minute chunks. Like, okay, the next 15 minutes I'm focused on this task, and then I'll do that task as hard as I can for 15 minutes. And then after that task is done, okay, now I can attend my next meeting, I can go get a drink of water or whatever. So in the 15-minute chunk way, that's almost the opposite of like a timeless thing, but it's almost like a never ending continuum of these 15-minute chunks. So it's similar but different, I guess.
Right. Well, and I think if you set I think sometimes, and I don't always set timers, but I think if you set a timer but forget about the timer, it sort of achieves that end
Yeah.
where you just enter into this event, say, I'm here for the long haul, and then the timer goes off. Well, that was my,
Yep.
that was now it's time to move on. So so I guess we're in the season of Lent.
We are. This won't air today, but today is the 27th. It's Monday. So Ash Wednesday was what, five days ago, right?
Oh, it was Wednesday. Well, Wednesday, of course it was.
Yeah. Oh.
Whatever Wednesday was, yes. Yeah, Monday minus Wednesday is
I
how
think
many days?
5 days.
Five, I guess, yes, because
Close
five,
enough.
because tomorrow is six,
Yeah.
seven was Wednesday again.
Yeah. So we're 5 days into Lent right now.
Ah, yes, uh seems like it's been a while though. It's funny how time is. So, all right, so here's my fun question. So I always say, my thing is I always say, my trope, Kevin is so Catholic. so 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 you did I guess I got to push this to the limit now. So you did I'm going to assume you didn't get ashes.
No, no, I didn't do that. No.
Did you think about it?
So, no. And the reason why I didn't is because I actually kind of have like a relatively hardline stance about not going like into Catholic
Oh,
services and stuff like that, like Catholic masses. And there's no real way to get
yes.
ashes on your forehead in like a secular manner. So I
Well, you
just
can get
don't.
you can get them from the Lutherans.
The Lutherans do ashes? See, I didn't know this.
Yeah. In fact, they even have one of my coworkers told me about this, that one of our local uh, Lutheran churches has, I think it's the Lutheran, they have a drive-through ashes. It's like a drive-through ash window.
Wow.
So
Very
there,
efficiency. That's the
so
German,
maybe
right?
look,
Like a
yeah, that's the German, right? Um, so yeah, the Lutherans have, I guess, yeah, I guess they do ashes too. And I guess they say, I've heard this, that Ash Wednesday is like one of the most attended events in the whole church year.
huh.
And because so many cultural Catholics,
Want to go partake
uh,
of the culture.
and maybe this might this might be a statistic from years ago, like maybe 20 years ago. I don't know if it's still the case, but I always get my ashes. In recent years, I should say, I get my ashes later in the day and the evening mass, just because I'm a night person. Um, I used to make an effort and get there for the noon service, um, but in recent years, I get mine towards the end of the day. So although I can say, it just in my 18 years in the church, um, there's certainly a noticeable tapering off of,
Hmm.
what the church was when I entered to what the church is today, just
Interesting.
certainly in terms of attendance and events they have. Um, but that used to be what they say when I was coming into the church. I would hear people say that it's one of the most, you know, they don't care about anything else, but by God, I'm gonna get my
Um,
ashes on Ash Wednesday.
I saw so I'm too old for TikTok, so I don't have a TikTok, but I do have an Instagram account. So I watch TikToks like a month after they come out on TikTok. I watch them on Instagram like a
Oh
real adult.
yes,
But
I'm the same.
I saw an Instagram reel of some guy um and he's like, yo, I love living in New York City, being a Catholic because like it's the only day that you walk outside, you're like, yo, you in the club, you in the club. And he's referring to like everybody being part of this Catholic club. But, and New York City, so I grew up right outside of New York City. I grew up in a town in northern New Jersey where if I walked to the end of my street, which would take me about 30 seconds to walk to, a bus could pick me up from that street and bring me into Manhattan. With traffic, it took me like an hour to get there. But in terms of like the distance, it was actually a very, very short distance because, New York City, everything's kind of on top of each other. Um,
Ah,
and New York City is super Catholic just from a cultural perspective. So I actually totally get the cultural allure of that one day a year when all the Catholics go get that outward symbol of their Catholicism. Um, and like I get it. And I used to wear my ashes like to school like on purpose. Like we'd go to mass at like 8 a.m. or whatever, and like or 7 a.m. and we would be like 20 minutes late to our first class. But my parents would just write us a note. It'd be like, "We're hardcore Catholics, so um, deal with it." And this was only in high school because I went to a private school first through
yeah, I
eighth.
was gonna say this
Yeah,
had to be high school.
yep, yeah. So, but in high school, I went to a public high school. But we still went to mass on the morning of Ash Wednesday. My parents would just write me a note so that I didn't get in trouble. I would just like walk in there, like here's the note signed by my mom that says like, please excuse Kevin, he was at mass, and I'm walking in with ashes on my forehead. But I grew up in northern New Jersey where the population is Catholic enough that like it was fairly common for people to walk around with ashes. So like it wasn't super weird for me to do it because it's not like only the
Right.
tradies did it. Like all the Catholics were doing it
Oh
because it was
yeah.
cool. Cool,
Yeah.
cool.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's cool as relative.
Right.
Except it's interesting that I guess in Rome they do this thing called sprinkling, um, where they really they like sprinkle the ashes on your forehead. So this all came
Huh.
out during the COVID pandemic, which I didn't hear about locally, but I heard about it recently in just sort of in retrospect. Um, so there was a provision made, which my local parish didn't do it. We just got the normal ashes. Well, maybe I should say I don't know, because there was one. I do believe in the real depths of the pandemic early on. I do believe I skipped. I think I'd have to look back. I'm pretty sure I skipped getting ashes that one time
Oh,
because
like
the
because
church.
2020, like it would like the pandemic started like right before Lent, right? Because the pandemic got into full swing in
Yeah, right, right,
what,
right, right,
early
right.
March?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, so I think it was that. I think right then and there, at that time, it was that it was, and I might have done 2 years where I was really, I was just very, just respectful of people's boundaries and the whole situation,
Hmm.
and just tried to be, although I did find, find a couple of churches where the population was like three, and I would, if I could get into mass and be like, you know
The only person in
have,
attendance.
like three, like five pews, like there was a 5 pew gap, that I felt pretty good about that. But I was also real cautious just because of the older population. A lot of the
Yeah.
ones that were going to the mass were like super old.
The same people in the
People.
group that are going to be the most impacted by a pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah, so I always thought, and I'm a little bit of a hypochondriac anyway, so I pretty much went through that whole time just convinced that I had COVID the whole time. And
Yeah.
I'm such a lone, and I'm a super loner. So I really, in my daily life, I don't engage with anybody at all in just my normal life for the most part. Um, and So anyway, I was actually I never had an occasion to even get tested,
Hmm.
because I just see so many people, and just the town I live in, it's a small town, and so anyway, that's all whatever. But so it came out during this whole thing, um, that I guess the Vatican issued this provision, or maybe the American bishop. I don't know who did it, whether it was the American bishops or Vatican instructed the American. However, it came down. Um, the instructions went out to all the local parishes that in so we wouldn't have to touch people. We could just sprinkle ashes on foreheads. And they said, well, that's just the way we do it in the Vatican anyway, is we do the sprinkling thing. So and
That's how they did it before the pandemic, even sprinkling.
that's what my understanding is.
Really,
Yes.
that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So uh so I also, like you, when I came into the church, was very zealous about my ashes, and I always wanted to get them. I always wanted to get them earlier in the day, just so I could be
Have them all day, like
seen.
yeah,
And I wanted, I made a real point of like going places, like, okay,
yep.
I got my, yes, there's, see, I'm a, and I have a, I have a little, I guess I have a little bit of a tempered attitude on that now, because I do, you know, there can be an element of self-righteousness in that.
100%.
And we are living in a different world where there's not as, it's not quite as Catholic of a culture as it once was. So there is a little bit of that confrontational dynamic.
Countercultural, I'll call it.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's countercultural.
Hmm.
um but So anyway, I just naturally get my ashes when the time is convenient, and it's deeply meaningful to me. You know, our priest, I should say our priest. I'm in the process of registering at a new parish right now, so I'm sort of, my old parish. I haven't attended for a number of years, just for many different reasons. Not, and it was a great parish, but just for other life reasons, I've been going to this. I sort of floated around for a few years, and I found this one parish that I really really resonate with, and so I'm in the. So I say our priest, but I'm in the process of, I'm not officially registered with this parish, but uh, on Ash Wednesday, our priest said a thing about it's very common, really, for the last 5 years to hear, instead of saying, "Remember, O man, that thou art dust, and unto dust, thou shalt return," or "Remember, you are dust." They
Mhm.
take out the gender language too. Just remember you are dust. But it was really common for quite a few years now to hear uh, they just say repent and believe the gospel.
Really?
And yeah,
But the
so
whole point of the dust, like the ashes on Ash Wednesday, is that you're gonna be ashes one day. Remember that. That's like the whole point.
oh, thank you, non-tradicat, bring it in,
Yep.
bring in the truth. Yeah, bring in the truth. Well, and I guess so. It's the word. I guess it's the repent aspect of it. You know that it's a season of repentance.
I
But
guess.
yeah, I get. But I agree with you. I like remember that you are dust.
Yep.
Okay, and so much to my delight, uh, when we began our Ash Wednesday service, our priest said, he commented on this. He says, "Now I don't know what he exactly is, like. I'm old fashioned, or I'm, from a time, I like saying, remember that we are dust." But he had to sort of like offer this little explanation, like, I'm going to be the guy that says, remember that you are dust. So we
Oh,
got,
but he did
so,
say it, and so you're so the
oh, yeah.
priests are
And he did
allowed to
say, yeah,
say it. Okay, so it's not like this was like
oh,
a liturgical
definitely.
like. Okay.
Yeah, it's one of those options. So, like, we have
Okay.
so many options,
Yeah.
and I think that, and I'm all for it. I think that's great that we have options. I'm not like we should have this very rigid.
Well, the I grew up trad obviously, and like trad, like the mass of pre 1962 is pretty darn rigid. Like there's really no options. Um,
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah. So that's one, and I think so we have options in, like, the prayers, the different prayers the priest says during the mass. He can pick and choose from a few. Now he just can't make one up,
right.
but he's got it, like, maybe five or so that he can choose, and they're all beautiful. I mean, I get so um I'm deeply moved. When I'm in the right headspace, it can be a very profound thing. Some of the prayers are, like, incredibly theological. um but so yeah, we got the remember that you are dust, much to my delight, because to me that is such a profound. So that, I guess I was going to I thought it would be fun for us to get into just that concept of being made from dust, being made from
Yeah.
the clay of the earth. But my follow up question, though, to your "Did you get ashes?" is maybe it's a two parter. Did so you also so you don't give anything up for Lent?
So I actually started giving things up year round when I stopped, uh, like doing Lent. Um, so I have different things that I do like during different parts of the year, and like that's a fairly secular practice. Like you've heard of
Like a
sober
New
October and
Year's
stuff like.
resolution,
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah. Well,
type
yeah,
thing.
but there's like a lot of people who will do like sober October, like no drinking at all in the whole month of
All
October.
of this stuff, yes,
Yeah.
yes, all of
And like
these
a
things,
lot of
right?
people will go vegetarian for the month of January or something like that. Um
Right.
so I've actually lost 45 pounds in the last 12 months just by um making like little changes. Like I gave up certain things and I replaced them with healthier alternatives for the most part. And I wound up losing like 45 pounds or like in the past 12 months. Um, most and
Wow.
it's really tapered off. Like it really, I lost 45 pounds. I lost like a pound a week, for like 45 weeks or whatever, which is that's actually the rate that you're supposed to lose it at. But my whole point is to be I give stuff up year round, and it's different stuff during different times of the year, and I don't limit it to only Lent. But I do think that Lent and Sober October and whatever, those are all like really good practices. Um, Religion aside, like they are just good for the human person to occasionally give stuff up. Like I'm fully on board.
Yes. Yes. So, oh gosh, I had so many thoughts there. Um, okay, so, um, oh man, I got 10
Too
thoughts
many. Yeah.
trying to come out at one
Right.
time. So, okay, so when you're giving things up though, I guess does it recall in your sort of in your consciousness sort of I mean, does it sort of recall in you a like memories of the Lenten practice while you're doing it? Does it sort of do you sort of
Oh
like
yeah.
think back like this is like Lent,
Yeah.
or
One
this is
hundred
my
percent.
Lent,
Yeah. One hundred
this is
percent.
sort of my non-Catholic Lent? Well,
Yeah.
that's
But
so there's
I I think that I do it better now than I did when I did like Lent because I used to give up stuff that I think is actually like bad to give up. There was one Lent where I gave up listening to music.
oh, I've thought about that.
I I
I
don't
can't.
I don't think that's a good thing to give up. Like I think it is good for the human person to listen to music. Like like in my opinion, giving up listening to music would be like giving up like eating vegetables or something. Like I don't think it's a good thing to give up good things. You should be giving up things that like are either like give up vices, but that's not the point of Lent. The point of Lent is like you should make
I know.
but like so something that I'm doing right now is so I'm not drinking alcohol during the week. I'm only drinking on weekends. And even over the weekends I'm not drinking nearly as much as I used to. But I used to be like I used to drink like a lot. Like I used to like, finish a bottle of bourbon like every
Month,
week-ish. No, I
week,
yeah. Well,
week.
because I have, I'm a heavy pour. I'm a big guy, right? I'm a big guy. I'm 6'2". I'm 200 pounds.
I
Like I'm
can't,
a
it's funny because this is funny because I don't want to interrupt you.
no, no. Go ahead. Yeah.
Watching your videos, I just know, I just had this question in my head, literally like either earlier today or last night. I was watching one of your videos and I had this question. I said, is he a big guy or
Yes.
is he like this little, uh, dwarfish, uh, like, I don't want to say hobbit. Everyone, I guess everyone stereotypes hobbits as being very small, which they're not. But to see this little little-ish person, or because you can't,
You
they're all
can't tell.
scale is
I'm
lost.
sitting.
All
Yep.
scale is lost on the.
Yep. 100%.
Anyway, I had to get that because
Yeah.
I just
But
literally was.
I'm 6'2", 6'3" when I stand up like really tall. Um, so I'm a fairly tall person. Um, but I'm also Irish, so I can drink. And like during the pandemic, when I was home all day, like this was when I first started working from home, I would have like a beer over lunch. I'd have like I'd make myself like a nice bourbon old fashioned, or even just drink just a nice glass of straight bourbon, like no ice, just
Yeah.
just like I like it.
Oh yeah,
Um,
neat.
but
Urban neat.
but if I have 2 or 3 glasses of bourbon like in one day, I'm not getting drunk off of that. But it's enough that if I do that like 7 days in a row, the bottle is gone. And so I'm not getting drunk. I'm just drinking bourbon. And I wouldn't call that a vice necessarily. Like drinking to the point of drunkenness is probably a vice. But having bourbon daily is not optimal. I'm not sure if it counts as a vice though. And so that's something that I'm not
No, I don't think I wouldn't say it's a moral vice, but
right
I would
exactly.
say,
Yeah.
but it's probably not
Optimal for your
good for
health.
your health,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're saying all these things lately about like what a moderate drinker is. I mean, it's like a teaspoon
Oh, I
of
know.
uh, white wine,
Mhm.
like twice a week or something
This is
really
water.
absurd.
Water by the way, just
Yeah.
water.
Oh, okay. I don't have anything. I'm not sipping on anything. Um, but I also have some Irish in me. Um, and I used to consume rather, you know, well, rather heavily. I don't know if I was ever a bottle a week guy, uh, but I think I could be maybe a
Um,
bottle a month guy. And I'm also probably small. I'm a I'm not a short guy, but I'm pretty lightweight.
yeah.
So
I
it
used
can hit me.
to I used to be a little bit of an alcoholic, like a little bit. Like
Hmm.
I was never I don't try to like overblow things. So I don't like
Hmm.
and I never like went to rehab or anything like that. But when I was in college, I used to drink like in the morning, like when I first woke up and stuff like that. But I forgive myself for this. I'll explain it to you, but I've forgiven myself. So um, I was in engineering school, so engineering school is just stressful. Um, I attended this school that has the highest rate of suicide in the country, um, and so that school, like, just that's a very stressful school to be at. Like, it's a real stressful school. Oh, and
It's almost a
I'm probably gonna have to like bleep out that word honestly if I try to post this to YouTube because I know YouTube doesn't like that word. But um so I was just very stressed from that, and then also I was like deconstructing my religion at that time, coming out of a very traditional form of Catholicism. So that was super stressful. So that just made me drink like a lot. Um, and I
yeah.
like distinctly remember like drinking before my 8:30 a.m. classes and stuff like that, just to like calm, like not like a crazy amount.
Wow.
Like I wasn't showing up to class like drunk, like
Yeah,
I
just kind of microdosing.
just enough to calm the nerves. Um, but that's kind of dangerous a little bit. Like that's not good.
That's a dangerous slope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and that's the extent of how bad it was for me. Um, but I like I like alcohol, like as much as the next guy, I guess. But maybe I like it a little bit more than the next guy. So I think it's a good thing for me to give up alcohol Monday through. So I don't drink at all Monday through Thursday, and then like if I'm doing something social over the weekend, I will drink like over the weekend. But um, drinking like what how much I drink now, like how much I've drank over the past 12 months compared to the 12 months prior is it's like staggering the difference. So
Right. Yeah, I think in my youth, I drank sort of heavily only because of just the novelty of, being able to acquire
yeah,
alcohol
yeah.
and discover and when I was going through my phase where I was discovering the different the different spirits, the single malt scotches and single barrel bourbons, and we used to drive down to the Party Source in just over the Kentucky, the just over the Cincinnati line in Kentucky. I don't know if that place is still there, but it was this like supermarket sized liquor store, and
Was it a liquor barn by any chance?
no, it was called the Party
Oh, the
Source.
party source. Okay, sorry.
It was called the Party Source. It's probably gone, but we would make this pilgrimage down there and just load up on all these. You're like, that was back when you couldn't just get Blanton's at any old neighborhood liquor store.
Yeah.
And some really nice, they had some of these really nice Armagnacs, like old Armagnacs. Like I bought this bottle of Armagnac from 1953.
Wow.
I mean, it was like $250 or something stupid. And I mean, I was young and dumb and didn't have, still living at home, and I didn't have any bills, and working a job, making decent, it was like just young and dumb. What you do when you're young and dumb. Buy $250 bottles of Armagnac. Uh, but I saved it and opened it on a very special occasion, and it was worth every penny
Good.
of it.
Good.
Um, so I consider like these days, I've really tapered off my alcohol consumption to where you know, I might be like a single glass a day type, you know, and but I do enjoy it just enough that it's something one of the things I historically would give up for Lent would be some form of alcohol. I
Yeah.
used to give up all alcohol, but then my alcohol consumption just tapered off to where it's down to the point where for me that's like my music. I say, well, gosh, what am I going to drink with my meal? Like soda or some carbonated and every alternative that I think I could imbibe. And I'm like, well, why would I want to drink that? Um, but it's very much a culinary thing. So I really don't like the feeling of being drunk. I just
I
really
I
love the
do.
taste. You like that little bit of that little bit of that little buzz feeling. If you can get it just the right way, it's a pleasant feeling. But I think maybe it's because I'm a lightweight that sometimes it, you know, that I cross that line from being that real pleasant buzz into just an unpleasant experience. But and I think my age is doing something to me as well. I just don't think my stomach handles it like I used to. Like I've changed so many things about my diet and like I just there's things I can't eat that I used to eat. So anyway, that's so yes, the so that's all Lent, Lent, um, and so yeah, so you don't so you still have this sort of quasi Lenten practice.
Yeah, like a Lenten practice is a good way to put it. Like the spirit of Lent definitely like lives on within me. Um, but I don't do something in particular during Lent that I don't do not during Lent. But I'm also
Right,
not opposed to it. Like I think it's a good practice for people to do. Um,
right.
yeah, I think it's a good practice. I think Lent is like a good thing from a Lent done well is a good thing, right? Because anything can be
Well,
abused.
there's so many amazing things about Lent. So just you know, just the whole remember that you are dust.
Yeah, I think that is a good thing to like contemplate your own mortality. I think that is a good thing.
Yes. So so I guess that's it. This is an interesting thing. I wanted to I wanted to ask you how a man being made of dust, if you view that through a sort of nominalist lens.
I do, and one of like my go to lines, like sometimes people will accuse me of like living in this world that has no wonder in it anymore, like because I'm a nominalist, so like there is no like objective beauty and objective goodness and all that stuff, and then I'll look at them and I'll say, you realize that we are literally made of stardust. Like that is incredible.
Yes.
And I think that's really
Yes.
cool to consider is the fact that like we are made of stardust. Um,
Yes.
at the beginning of all of it, every single atom was a hydrogen atom. Eventually,
Hmm.
hydrogen fused into helium, and then a helium and a hydrogen fused into a lithium, so on and so forth. But everything was made in the center of stars, and everything heavier than iron was made in the center of a dying star. That's super cool. You have stuff in your body that used to be in the center of a dying star. Like that's incredible.
Yes.
That's not quite the same thing as like the you are dust and from dust you shall return. Like that's contemplating your mortality, which I think is distinct from like this kind of nominalistic conception of like where people come from, right? Stardust and all that. Um, but I think that they're both good for the human person to consider.
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean that's this is a cool subject, but so I guess one thing I think about now when you say that uh so when so this dust you are, to dust you shall return. This goes back to Genesis. Okay. So this is an old idea.
Mm-hmm.
Um, not that Genesis was written at the beginning of time. We should,
For
you know, I think oftentimes, and even I still do this. I still read Genesis like it's the first written thing of all, you know, of all history. Um, but obviously, it was written
Genesis is
backwards.
Yeah, Genesis isn't even the oldest book in the Old Testament, right?
Right. I think Job maybe
Something like, I
has
don't
is a
remember
contender
which
for
one
being one of the
is.
oldest.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's something that's another subject that I need to that I'm really fascinated by, and I want to take a deep dive into that into the Old Testament.
Hmm.
Um, uh, origins of those books. Um, but even so, it's still, I mean, just going back to Old Testament times, it's still an old idea, and who knows how old the idea, just like in the New Testament, these strands of tradition that appear in these books, which were written, in whenever the 70s, 80s, 90s. Some of these things written in the Old Testament. The strands of those traditions can be very ancient.
Oh, for sure.
But but so but even so, this idea of man being made from the dust of the earth, that's a fairly I guess it's a fairly sophisticated idea. Uh,
It it is, and it also might not be. If you'll humor me for a second, the reason I say
of course.
it is and it might not be. So what do I mean by that? I think that our ancestors, 3,000 years ago, when was, it doesn't matter when it was written. It was 600 BC or whatever. Doesn't matter. When they were writing Genesis, the authors of Genesis knew that human bodies decomposed, and if you wait around long enough, the human body really does turn into dust. Like it really does. If you just watch it.
Oh, for sure,
So
for sure.
so I do think that in that sense, it's not super complicated. The claim that we are dust and to dust you'll return. Like okay, coming from dust, that might be a little weirder of a claim for them to make.
The coming from, yes, and
Yeah,
that would be the right. But and I think you're right. I think you're exactly right that the development of the idea
yeah.
was
You
certainly,
can drill deeper
we
though.
observe where
Yes.
we
Yes.
observe we return to
Mm-hmm.
dust,
Mm-hmm.
but then you know projecting that backwards, saying, oh, well, God must have made us from
Yeah.
dust.
Yeah.
So then, okay, so then now, so going back to this time, something else I wanted to explore with you um, is the idea of the when the novelist, and I've heard you talk about this. I think it was you, about the novelist simples, these
The
simples
the
that every
mereological simples.
yes, that
Yeah.
everything can be reduced to simples. Okay, but I guess we don't really know what simples are.
Yep.
Is that is that correct?
Yep. I have no idea what the mereologically simplest thing is.
Right, because I remember when I was taking physics in college, we were just beginning to talk about quarks,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how far back I go. And uh, and so the I know we're always, so in my lifetime, there was a time when we didn't even have, well, I should say I didn't know the word quarks. There was a time in my life that, you know, I went through all through high school, never talking about, never even hearing the word quarks. And then all of a sudden it appeared in this college physics book. And I thought, well, that's pretty wild. But it was almost, if I remember it rightly, and I was never a brilliant physics guy. So even though it fascinates me, the whole thing fascinates me. But as far as actually doing the science, I'm not it's not where my aptitude lies. But I just remember when it was coming out, it was almost still, it felt to me like it was still sort of a theoretical thing. Like we're postulating these things, but we can't really put our fingers on them yet. Um, So just like the Super Hadron Collider, it's like we only know these things are there because of what happens when we shoot these massive lasers at them and see what they. It's like, so how, so we get to this. So I guess I asked myself this question. Is there, and maybe I ask you, do you think there is a limit beyond which we will not be able to go? Um,
Um, I do think that one day the human race will figure out what the simplest thing is. I do think so. Will it happen in our
wow.
lifetime? I don't know. I don't think so. Um, Now, the rate of scientific discovery does move exponentially, and I'm fairly young. I'm still in my 20s. So if I think about like the chances of me being alive in 50 years is pretty darn good. I'll probably still be here in 50 years. 60 years, maybe. 70 years, probably not, but it's still possible. But let's pick 60 years. I'll be in my late 80s if I make it that far. Um, 60 years, like compare 60 years ago to today, and then imagine that 60 years from now, it's exponential. So like the difference between 60 years ago to today is going to be way less than the difference from today to 60 years from now. That's the idea anyway.
True, true,
So
right, of course, right.
so I'm always hesitating to say like what humans won't do because uh humans are really good at like proving everybody else wrong. So I'm hesitating to say that it won't happen in our lifetime. But if I had to guess right now, I wouldn't imagine that it happens within our lifetime. But we have pretty interesting theories right now about how all matter really is just like certain parts of fields that are getting excited. So, um, and that seems to check out from the idea that like we know that matter and energy are the same thing. Like Einstein figured that out in the 1920s and 30s and stuff.
Right,
So
right.
if all that matter really is like the excitation, like the like a certain field getting excited, that checks out to me. Um, and we have these really interesting theories. And so if at the end of the day the most simple thing, the most mereological simple thing is a field, it's some kind of like quantum field. And these fluctuations in this quantum field are where we see energy existing as mass. Okay, cool. So the simplest thing is a quantum field. Now, we are not there yet. We do not like we cannot say that with any certainty, but it's an idea. Um and so
Right.
we might prove that theory correct within my lifetime. Who knows?
And so then, okay, so then let's say we do get to that point, then you you would say that satisfies, I guess that for you would satisfy like all of reality, right? Like you don't hold out like a possibility that we would get to where we would understand that. And then there's something beyond that that we still don't understand.
Oh, sure. I mean, there's always the possibility that we think that we hit the bottom and then it turns out we don't. Like that's totally possible. Um, some scientists in like the 1850s or something in England put out a paper about how they had discovered everything that there is to be discovered and that there are no new scientific discoveries to be made. Um, and I
Right.
love pointing to that thing as like, and that was like shortly before electricity was discovered, or something like that. Like it's, so clearly, but um, uh, to be honest, even if we do find out and then we can have like really high confidence in like the most mereologically simple thing, that doesn't really get us like a whole lot further than where we are right now, because
Sure.
we're pretty darn close. And the only thing that we
Sure.
can't say for certain right now is that like we know for certain that it's not turtles all the way down. Like, but it doesn't seem very intuitive to me that like there could be like no mereologically simplest thing. Like it seems to me like there must be something at the bottom of all of it. Um, and I think most religious people agree, and most religious people would say like, well, yeah, that's God. And I'm just saying like, well, okay, like let's look and see if we find him there. Um, I imagine that what we'll find is some kind of field, some kind of quantum field. Um, And then like the pantheists and stuff like that will want to be like that field is God, and if that's like how we are going to define God, then great, I'm a theist at that point, right? Um, but that conception of theism looks nothing like mainstream Christianity, so I wouldn't call myself a theist at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Not well, not historic. Yeah, so let's not historic
Right.
mainstream Christianity. Although I would, you know, um, I promised myself I was not going to get into all of the bring up all of my wild people in this episode,
Let's
all
do it.
these fringe people that I love.
Let's
But
bring up the fringest of them.
oh dear. I got, you know what, I gotta um I need to re-articulate my grounding principle of of just for all of the good Catholics, that my principle is open mind, faithful heart. Okay, that I think, and I don't have this worked out in any systematized way, but I personally tend to operate from this place of what I would call a radical openness to truth.
That's awesome.
And and I but I think that, okay, so for me, I also see that as um a right, um I see that as an actual principle of the church. Okay. And now, certainly, we have not lived that out in the best of ways. But I think the church at its best, when the church is doing itself in a good way, that it's living. The church is being lived out best when it is operating from that radical openness to truth. Okay. And I think, I've been going back. I'm busy reading other things, but I am going back and starting to go through the documents of Vatican II, and I think that is, I think Vatican II had that, uh, was operating in that spirit of a radical openness to truth. Even if there were like several subjects that they that the either John 23 or Paul 6 just said, okay, we're not going, there's a couple of places we're just not touching here.
Yeah.
Which, and I don't know if that was, I don't know if I can even be critical of that. Um, just from the standpoint that, uh, I look at it like, I look at it a lot like remodeling a building, you know, that you can't just come in and you can't just tear everything down at once. Okay. That sometimes you have to carefully deconstruct something with a degree of sensitivity before you rebuild it. And a lot of the philosophers will talk about this in terms of, like this cautionary note to personal introspection. Like, I think Nietzsche said things about this, and Kant said things about this, um, where when you're going to go deep into yourself, you got to really do it. Like, you can, like, the risk is that you can uncover some stuff that you could just go into pure madness if you don't do it the right way. So, just looking at the church as, this massive structure, uh, I can see where the Pope just as a made a prudential as a prudential guideline, said, okay, look, we're not dealing with these matters here. But it did deal with so many things. Um, but so, personally, I operate, you know, from this position of a radical openness to truth. And what is the great mantra of the non-tratic cat channel? But all truth is God's truth, right? So so all truth is God's truth. I think I promised you I said in my email that I would pull up that quote from Augustine,
Oh,
where
that's
this
right.
this idea traces to, because I first heard the expression "all truth is God's truth." Someone said, so as Augustine said, "All truth is
Right. But he never
God's."
exactly said that. But did you find where
No,
it came
no,
from?
no. Well, I bought the book. I bought this book years ago. So when I came into the Catholic Church, you know, and again, like I told in our first episode, when I gave my little history background bio talk, uh, and basically I sort of studied myself into the Catholic Church. Like I just came to the Catholic Church knocking on the door, being like, "Hey, I think I want to." They didn't come after me. I kind of found them.
Yeah.
But so when I came into the church, I did not know a lot about the saints. So when it came time for me to choose uh, my baptismal name, I just went with Augustine. Because I was reading the Confessions. That was my book. The first, it would have been the first. How did that happen? I think it was my first. Oh, right. It was Lent, because I came in on the Easter Vigil. So going through in the autumn, we started um, the RCIA, and then by Lent that year, it was getting down to like, oh man,
The
I gotta
wire. Yeah.
I gotta decide. And it was really, and I held out until the last, really probably the last 2 weeks. Is like, am I going to be able? And I had a buddy uh, in my RCIA class. We were both the same age, both young single guys, and sort of had coming from similar fundamentalist backgrounds. Although he was coming from a very Calvinist Reformed background, where I was never on board with Reformed theology, but but certainly I'm coming from a very fundamentalist place. So we were sort of we had this one last hurrah before we entered the church, and I had him over for like a pizza. We got pizzas and came over and had pizzas, and just like, the joke was like we talked each other into joining. Like we had this big last powwow. It was like, you know what are my hangups, what are his, and we just talked them all through, and I said about his hangups, oh, those aren't so bad, and then he said about my hangup, yeah, yeah, I don't think that's a big deal. So we kind of like, okay, if you're going to do it, I'm going to do it. And so we took this plunge together. But so yeah, so I didn't know a lot of saints, because I'm just coming from my own background, bringing my own history. And so Augustine was the guy that was, he was very, inspiring to me at the time. So so I took that, as my baptismal, my confirmation name. Um, but so yeah, so I have a few books by Augustine, but so I had to find this book on Christian doctrine. Oh, sorry,
There you go. Perfect.
the screen is it's throwing me because it's backwards,
Right. I
but
know. Yeah.
on Christian doctrine. Um, so what he says in here, and it's pretty good. So so let's see, where does it start? Okay. So he starts this out. But we should not think that we ought not to learn literature because Mercury is said to be its inventor, nor that because the pagans dedicated temples to justice and virtue, and adored in stones what should be performed in the heart, We should therefore avoid justice and virtue. Rather, every good and true Christian should understand that wherever he may find truth, it is his Lord's.
That's pretty close to all truth is God's truth. That's pretty darn
I,
close.
yes, wherever. I mean, and certainly if you're in a dialogue with in a Christian dialogue,
Yeah.
okay, because so all truth is God's truth would sort of be the universal application of that.
Yeah.
But you know, if you're speaking, and this, and really when it comes up is oftentimes in Christian dialogues
Mm-hmm.
because secular
They
folks
don't
don't
care
have
about
a use
God's
for
truth.
it much.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you say it, you're always appealing to some Christian sensibility anyway,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, so every good and true Christian should understand that wherever he may find truth, it is his Lord's, you know. So make a few little word substitutions there,
Yeah.
and you
That
get
is
that
cool.
all truth is
Yeah.
God's truth. And someone's recently, I had never heard this before, but someone recently said that Aquinas said something like it, but I've never found that. Uh, Probably because I'm so allergic to anything scholastic.
I understand and share your allergies there. Um, if you don't mind, I'll ask a couple questions about so your radical openness to truth. Um, so I think
Yes.
that's awesome. I think that's the right way to go about life. Um, and I certainly agree that Vatican II was a massive step in in the direction of a radical openness towards truth for the Catholic Church. 100% agreed. Um, but now here's where I'm going to ask a little bit of like a probing question. How do you square and you kind of alluded to this a little bit, but just we didn't dwell on it long. How do you square um, the concept of dogma with a radical openness to truth? Because those two things seem to me to be more or less polar opposites.
Okay, so this is like this is going to be book sharing day, right?
Yes, let's do it. We love books
so
here.
all right, so I alluded to this book in our last talk, and I didn't know the name. I just said, oh yeah, Father Casey, this book, and it's a cool book and everything. So this theologian Richard Geyerdetz, okay, and here is his book.
I can read
By
that
what
pretty clearly. I think the audience can read that pretty clearly too.
by
It looks
what
good.
authority? By Richard Geyerdetz, and uh, I'll just say again, Father Casey did a really nice video about really one specific chapter um, in this book. So, and what Geyerdetz, the way Geyerdetz views this, and here is he's got a little chart here called the gradations of church teaching. At the very center, dogma. The second ring out, definitive doctrine. The third ring out, authoritative doctrine. And then the last ring out, prudential admonitions and church discipline. So he's got this little,
There you go.
yeah, this little chart here. Oh gosh,
No, that looks good. I can see it. Yeah, that looks good.
yeah. Um, and so, Guy I sort of went through this last time, so I don't want to totally dwell on the book, but just to sort of recap from what I said last time, how in Geyerdet's view, he makes the point that so the church has dogmas. The church does not have an official number of dogmas. So it's like the church will talk, yeah, that's dogma. And then say, oh, okay, so you guys have dogma. Well, you should be able to count them, right? Well, it's not quite as clear cut as that. So Geyerdetz makes the point that there is really only one true central dogma, which is the person of Christ. And out of the person of Christ, his example is the person of Christ is like um, is sort of like a prism, and or maybe getting this wrong. The exactly the analogy. I think the ray of light. The ray of light is Christ, and then as Christ passes through maybe the prism of the church, you see the strands of light uh, that sort of emanate out from that. So as you meditate on the person of Christ, we discover things about Christ that we would that would sort of become that we would sort of speak of in terms of dogma, but they all sort of flower out of the one Christ. So um, so I would say that first of all. So just taking the step of simplifying what dogma is, because I think oftentimes when the Catholic Church is criticized, it's criticized as just being this very overly dogmatic organization, like everything is a dogma. And so in fairness, I think we would have to say, okay, well, yes, so yeah, we do present, the Catholic Church, we do sort of present ourselves that way. That's sort of like, okay, my bad. Yeah, we are maybe a little bit that way. But I guess Guyardet's project here is that, he digs into it and and just tries to parse through it and say, okay, let's take a step back and say, okay, well, what really is dogma? And maybe we need a healthy corrective to maybe some of our past stances, on some of our dogmatic teaching. Um,
So I did pull up Ludwig Ott's definition of dogma from his like 1950s thing. Um,
I have that book over
okay,
there.
yeah. Um, and Ott says that dogma is, and you'll have to forgive me, my echo is going off. Um, Ott says that the definition of dogma is, he gives us a long list of things, but it ends with that which, if a baptized person denies, uh, he automatically becomes subject to the punishment of excommunication. So the Catholic Church does seem to define dogma in such a way as like the, hey, if you're going to be Catholic, you got to believe this, which does
Well,
seem
okay.
fairly opposed to.
Oh, okay. So yeah. So the only thing I would say about Ott and so, you said that here is Ludwig Ott's book from the 50s.
Pre-Vatican II.
Okay. So I'm just gonna, my only thing about Ott is, you know like you know gotta quote the dude, from the Big Lebowski, like, that's just like your opinion, dude. How does that thing go? Like, that's just like your opinion, man.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But not to be flippant about, so I guess, so I gotta say, I'm 100% a Vatican II Catholic, just because of where I am in time. Okay. I came into the church. I came into a Vatican II church. And when I came into the church, um, Vatican II was being mostly celebrated. I came into a church that was still had a very positive view of Vatican II. I mean, the only thing that you would maybe hear is that there were these some of these Vatican II, you know, super progressive liberal guys that were taking it, going off in the wrong spirit of Vatican II. You would still hear criticism about that, but there was a very healthy view of Vatican II. Um, so to me, all of this recent, uh, suspicion that Vatican II is looked at, um, none of that was mainstream when I came into the church. It was, Vatican II was largely celebrated. Now, I will say that looking back on those days now, I do see there was still a little bit of uh, a co-opting of Vatican II for different agendas. And so I just went back recently and watched an old, oh gosh, I think it was 10 years old, an episode of uh, whatever the EWTN show is with Father Pacqua. And he had on this guy that was supposedly like a Vatican II expert. And it was going to be a Vatican II episode. Well, I had just watched a presentation by um, Father John O'Malley. And I would say John O'Malley would be more in that little more on the what people would call the progressive end of um, you know of the Vatican II outgrowth. But I just watched this beautiful talk by which was just a very beautiful and robust exploration of Vatican II and all of the history, and it was really a substantial talk. Um, and then I watched this old episode, this EWTN presentation, and the difference between the O'Malley presentation, which was just really getting into the history, prehistory, the documents, different teachings, how we can apply this. The EWTN episode was this um, very like it was trying to like put Vatican II in a little box, you know, and I listened to the whole thing thinking, okay, they literally said nothing about Vatican II this whole time. It was all just these, uh, you know, these silly questions from the audience about, and I don't remember the specific questions, but like about clown masses or this thing or this is some other silliness or the church is going to hell in a handbasket now, and how is this what Vatican II meant? And then they just give this very like speaking to a child kind of answer about everything that Vatican II wasn't. It was everything that Vatican II wasn't. And then I'm sitting here thinking, okay, they literally said not one word in this whole show about what Vatican II was. And so, you know, I guess I get, we weren't perfect when I came into the church, but at least we were still Team Vatican II, even if you know, some strands of the church were co-opting it for their own purposes, and other strands were co-opting it for their purposes. Um, but so all that said, just to say, I consider myself a very Vatican II Catholic, but I also consider myself uh, a Catholic in harmony with the living magisterium of the church. So I think being a Catholic today, we're living in a Vatican II church. So that's how I operate. Now, with all of that high praise that I shower upon Vatican II, I also I also still have a massive respect for the past. And just as I hope to, my current project is um, going more deeply into the documents of Vatican II, and exploring them in their fullness. I also have, you know, as my goal that I want to equally explore uh, Trent, uh, all of the past councils, and explore the riches of those councils, because I do think that Trent also has great riches, but I do think that it was speaking at a specific place and time. So, oh, hey, there was I got a little too animated. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, yeah, loud and clear.
Because I got a little too animated and
No
pulled on
problem.
my cord. It's how this is how how old fashioned I am. I have this just my basic phone with these headphones, probably from my 1980s Walkman. Uh, that's how sophisticated I am. Um, so the only thing I would have to say when you appeal to Ott, I would just acknowledge that was certainly a strand of thinking in the church. But it wasn't the only strand brewing in the 50s, because we did have um, Henri de Lubac, and we did have Yves Congar, and we did have Hans Urs von Balthasar, who at that time was dialoguing with Karl Barth. And I heard a thing recently, um, that someone said, someone attributed to um, Pius 12 on Karl Barth, where Pius 12 allegedly said that Barth was the greatest theologian the world has known since Aquinas.
Huh.
And okay, so now since then, I just I thought that kind of blew my mind. But then, you know, von Balthasar wrote a whole book about Karl Barth, um, and had this great friendship and dialogue with Karl Barth. And I think Barth was even I think he, I think he attended Vatican II. I'm fuzzy on that bit of history, but he was certainly he was certainly present in Hans Urs von Balthasar. Um, but okay, but so since I heard that story, I just literally, like, last night I was reading some things and I came across this other story about how Paul VI once said, "Oh, Karl Barth was the greatest theologian since Aquinas," and then in this apocryphal story, Bart is also uh, Bart also says in reply, when his friend says, "Oh, did you hear that the Pope said you're the greatest theologian since Aquinas?" That Bart's retort was, "Well, that right in itself is the great proof of papal infallibility."
That's
And so
funny.
in the apocryphal story, Bart says it both about Pius 12 and Paul 6.
That's
So
funny.
it's sort of like, you know, what did Jimi Hendrix, what did Jimi Hendrix say when they asked him who the greatest guitarist in the world was? Did he say, you know, Roy Gallagher? Did he say Phil Keaggy? Did he say all these, like, every name your favorite guitar player? And there's this apocryphal story about, oh, when they asked Jimi Hendrix what it feels like to be the greatest, he said, "Oh, ask, you know,
Yeah.
name your favorite guitarist," is what Jimi Hendrix said. So it's sort of like, I wonder if this statement about Karl Barth is the same. Um, but so that would be what that would be what I would have to say about Ott. That, yes, sure, Ott was saying those things, but at the same time we had, de Lubac, and de Lubac being greatly repressed, in the days immediately before the the, the Second Vatican Council. and and then I think it was, and maybe it was Congar that one of those guys that John the 23rd was reading something of their writings and was like, these guys are maybe on to something, but they had been, repressed, uh, much in the way some of our, you know, progressive voices have been, in recent years. And even, and somebody else said something I heard, um, that even in the days following um, Thomas Aquinas, when he was, like the new, the hot new thing in town, that in the years following Aquinas, that even he was looked at with a little bit of suspicion in those days. Like he wasn't just like totally embraced by the whole. There were still these very conservative holdouts that were like, oh, this new Aristotelian philosophy is just too wild and radical. Um, so all that to say, I take art with a grain of salt, and I think we have to contextualize art, and I think the whole of church history has to be contextualized, because we can, in hindsight, we can so easily go back and be critical of the past.
Maybe I can
But
ask like another question, because
mhm,
so we've been talking about um, dogma and
yes,
a radical openness to truth, and
yes,
um, it seems like the main I'll call it the project of the last few minutes has been to um, perhaps walk back the traditional or the old fashioned notion of the infallibility of the Catholic Church, in as much as the Council of Trent is infallible. If we're going to walk
yeah,
back the infallibility of of these church councils and papal infallibility, if we're going to walk it back to the point where there is no dogma except for Jesus Christ, why be Catholic? Why be Catholic instead of just Christian?
well, so I would say, all right, so when I, way years and years, and I'll just, this may be a funny answer, but years and years ago, hmm, I don't even want to count, when I was a young, just a right in my first year of college, and going all the way back to philosophy 101, uh, and one of the concepts we read 5 books. I don't know if I can remember them now, but it was Descartes, Hume, Kant, Quine. Um, oh, and you know, the elephant in the room, Plato.
Oh,
Duh, Plato.
just that
But
ever heard of him? No, he's nobody. Plato,
that yeah, that that
that
that that
guy.
that there's that one other, who's
Yeah.
that other guy I'm missing? Plato. Yeah, that guy. um, so one of the things, and I think this was more of my, I think this is getting more into my, maybe more my professor's explanation. It just is a thing that stuck with me, and I think he was trying to. It was when we were talking about Quine that he was explaining to us how classically philosophers tended to look at truth with a very foundational model. Like, okay, we're going to lay down our most basic principles. Now we're going to build a layer of principles on top of these, and now we're going to, So it was this very foundational model, like we're building, a structure, and and the first thing has to be right, then the second one has to, and if one of these, if, it's like a Jenga game, if we can pull out the right one, the whole thing is going to collapse. Um, and then he said that a more, maybe a more modern way to look at truth is like a web. And maybe that's the name of, that might have even been the name of the book, Quine's A Web of Belief, perhaps. But, saying like a more modern idea of truth is to look at truth like a web. So it's like all of these strands woven together. And it's not like there's a, it's not like there's this foundational starting point. And then, one of these things is defective. So then the whole thing is just going to collapse. It's more like there's this elaborate web. And each of these strands has some merit of truth. Now, maybe there's a bad strand, you know, but if if there are enough good strands, we're going to have a steady structure. And this is the same, this gets into like even, maybe not a step back into the foundational model, maybe like sort of uh, like an architectural example. Uh, one of the principles of structural design is redundancy. So it's like when we're designing a building, we would say, okay, we're not just going to say the whole thing rests on like this one thing, and you destroy this one thing, and the whole building is going to collapse. So that's like bad engineering, because all we got to do is destroy the one thing, and the whole thing collapses. But no, when we do good design or good engineering, we need to do it the best way is to do it redundantly. So we can say, well, this has got to be in place, this has got to be holding it up, this is, and there's all these things. So I think the web model and the redundancy model is how I would look at the church. So the question is, why be Catholic? Well, I think so I would say I come at that, and maybe and this could be my very personal way of coming, because I come at so many things this way. Everything in my life, I tend to be in this way. It's like there's not no, it's not just one reason. It's many reasons, Um, but one reason I would say why be Catholic is um, it's the ancient tradition. Okay, so this is what led me to the Catholic Church, because I was coming out of the most almost I was almost as fundamentalist as you could possibly be, as so fundamentalist that I didn't, if it wasn't written in the pages of my Bible, uh, there was no grounds for believing it at all. And so, um, it was like, well, why do we have to, why do Christians celebrate on Sunday? You know, there's no biblical reason to do so. No black and white. Okay, a black and white biblical reason. Like it doesn't say anywhere in the Bible, celebrate on Sunday. And so it's like, well, why did we stop keeping the Sabbath? The Ten Commandments say to keep the Sabbath. So why would we not do what the Bible says to do? We have to keep the seventh day Sabbath. Um, so I was and there's no Trinity, right? There's no Trinity because the word Trinity is not in the Bible. Uh, so I was as fundamentalist as you could possibly be, and everything that fundamentalists brought with it, all the kooky people, uh, like I think you said, not in our talk, but there was another talk you were having with someone about maybe it was Jason, the failed rad trad
Yeah.
discussion. This is great. Oh, what a great. I hope you. I hope there will be some future follow up video with him. But
Jason comments on my videos, and I always respond when I do because I love talking to him. So I'll reach out to him. I'll see if he wants to come back on.
and I would
Because
say,
I
yeah, and just as a yeah, just as a real tangent, I would say I think I hope you do maybe reach out to some of these folks, like the and I don't even want you to tell me his name because I loved the mystique of you did this whole video and you never even
I
said
don't
who
know
he
his
was.
name.
The greatest, not Jason, but the greatest.
Anonymous? Are you talking?
No, not anonymous. Another great video.
Okay.
Another great one that I. No, the guy. I think the first thing I ever watched by you. Well, how did you bill the guy? Like the world's greatest authority on transubstantiation
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah. Doctor.
And
Do
so
you want me
that
to say
whole
his name?
video. No, I don't, because
Okay.
I like not knowing his name. I like the.
He wound up
Just
he
like
wound up commenting on the video with his YouTube account. Like cuz somebody said some stuff that is like obviously I disagree with my guest from that video on plenty of things. But somebody commented on something that I was like, "Well, no, I know that you're trying to like be on my side, but you're wrong about this, and let me tell you why." And then the guy who I was interviewing chimed in as well. He's like, "Yeah, when I said this, I didn't mean that." So I was trying to be more cautious with his identity than he was. He doesn't really care. So,
no, I just like the fact that you just came out and launched into this whole video and it really felt cool, like I was eavesdropping on this very, you know, private conversation, just this honest discussion between these two guys, because it wasn't presented like, oh, we're on the show and and the theme song and everything, which is all good, but it was such a refreshing kind of presentation when I saw it. But no. All I was going to say was, uh, you, it would be fun to, it would be interesting if maybe all I was saying is maybe reaching out to people, because I like I am probably I'm probably your most I'm probably your biggest pest of a guest, where I'm the guy that reaches out to you saying, can we do it, can we do it, can we do another, can we do another, and I think probably a lot of people are just going to be like, he hasn't called, he's not doesn't want to have, so you might, I don't know, you might I would certainly enjoy hearing another talk with the transubstantiation guy. um
I think I will. I'll tell you, I'm actually booked right now through until about the last week of March, for calls, which is good. It's a good problem to have because I'm also appearing on some other people's shows too. Um,
yeah,
so like some of the people that I've had on my show, I'm going on their shows coming up.
right,
And
right.
I do try to limit these to like one a week if I can. I'll do two a week though if like I have like a good opportunity. But yeah, we'll do two a week. And the only reason I don't do more is because I work like 70 hours a week. So,
I can't imagine the amount of, you know, I mean, you've got to mentally prepare for these. You got to put the thing all together. You got to do your I mean, I mean, it's hard enough for me to post a, an Instagram photo. That takes me, like, I can spend 3 hours doing a, you know, agonizing over a, stupid, silly post that um, but so yeah, no, I 100% appreciate that. But what was I? Where was I going with all of that? Um,
we were still on Why Be Catholic. We were still on the web of truth and all that.
right. So okay, so who? Well, if it comes into my, I have such a leaky.
Let me
Uh,
maybe I can just kind of course correct real quick by asking another similar question. So this is the way that I look at it. Um, if we have this Catholic Church, but we don't have any of the dogma, all that we have is this organization that has said things like, "Yep, I can't be wrong," but then we today look at that and we're like, "Well, they were wrong when they said that they can't be wrong," obviously, because we know that because we're enlightened and they were not, and all that, which is great. Um, but then I almost see no reason to like cling to that tradition. Um, you mentioned that like the Catholic Church has the tradition, and that's what like prompted you to join the church. But this tradition is the thing that's claiming infallibility. And if we're going to be so dismissive of the papal infallibility and the infallibility of the ordinary magisterium as well, with the dicasterate for the doctrine of the faith and all the councils, if we're going to take all of that and say, like, well, yeah, but they actually weren't as infallible as they thought they were, it almost seems like we're saying, yeah, the tradition, schmatrition, who cares about it? That's kind of the way that I see it. So, what are
Right,
your thoughts?
I can 100% see that line of thought. So I would, what I would, the way I would look at that is, um, I would look at the, I would look at the corrections to um, tradition in a very more nuanced way. Okay, so I would say, okay, I'm not going to be, um, let's say, I'm just going to be open to a fuller explanation of the tradition and open to modern corrections in light of our contemporary understanding, development, and knowledge. So, so I think we can almost say two things. You could maybe, and let's just completely speak in hypotheticals because I don't want to, uh, you know, I don't want to get myself in trouble by
Get excommunicated
becoming.
for appearing on my
I don't want
show.
to become a a formal heretic or a uh,
Oh, call. Where's Michael Lofton? Where's Michael
oh
Lofton?
dear, I wasn't going to say that. Yeah, don't call the heresy police on me.
Right.
Um, but so let's just say just speaking hypothetically, you know, and I might even think of a real good example that but I'm we're just having an organic
Yeah.
conversation. I'm not prepared. This is the fun of the fun of our conversations is that
Off the
this is just an
cuff.
organic chat
Yeah.
between friends. So this is real. This is
Yeah.
real. I'm not trying to, you know, convince you of anything or convert, I guess proselytize you or re-proselytize you, whatever. I mean, I mean, I guess, I guess there's a element of hoping that I have a good thought that persuades you, that something I say resonates with you and it might be edifying for you. And something I think a lot of stuff you say edifies me. I mean, uh, I think it edifies me a lot. Um,
Everything that you say resonates with me. For the record, everything that you say resonates with me for sure. Um, that's now resonates with me is not a synonym for reverts me back to trad Catholicism. Those two things are not the exact.
oh, well, I hope that just for the record,
Yes, yes.
I hope that I do not revert you
Yeah,
to trad,
that'd be really
trad
tough. That'd be
Catholic.
really tough, I think, to happen. That'd be super tough.
But let me too say though, let me too say that who was the guy that commented on there was a comment. Let's just say there was a comment on the anonymous video um, about there are no what was there are no rad trads and no, there are no trad Catholics and Catholics. There are just Catholics. And then you said, "Oh, spoken like a true trad" or something.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think so I would say the same thing, but with a different twist on it. I would say yes, there are no progressive Catholics, trad Catholics, whatever. There are just Catholics, and so there's some of that is there's something to that. Now, so the difference though between he and I, when he says there are no Catholics or rad Catholics, there are no trad Catholics and Catholics, there are just Catholics. Well, by Catholics, he means trad Catholics, right?
Yeah, and I think
If you're
that
if
I
you're a real Catholic, you're a trad Catholic,
I'm gonna
right?
see if I could pull up the comment on my phone too, because I even think that you are being generous to the way that he phrased it. If I recall
Maybe.
correctly, he said something to the effect of like, "There is no trad Catholic and like Novus Ordo Catholic. Like, there's only Orthodox Catholics and then non-Catholics or
Oh, this will
something."
be fast. This will be fascinating because it really is a. This is really a just a real good thought experiment into our the lenses, which the way we read things with lenses. So what did he
Okay,
really say?
this is exactly what he said. There are no trad Catholics, only Catholics. Those who believe and obey, and those who don't. Those who grow, and those who don't. So the believe and obey to me sounds very trad.
But you know what? I think all of that is glorious. I think yes, believing and obeying in the sense of a radical openness to truth, and believing and obeying the leadership of Pope Francis and the living magisterium of the church. So that's where I. But so I guess what I would say is yes, there are just Catholics, but when I say there are just Catholics, my understanding of what it is to be a Catholic is open to the whole spectrum. So I'm open to the most hyper progressive Catholic, and I am also open and welcoming um, to the most radical and trad of Catholics. Like so, here's a fun anecdote from my last couple of weeks. So you probably heard that terrible story about the murdered bishop from L.A.
Yeah.
Or cardinal. He was a cardinal, right?
Yeah.
Bishop, bishop,
I
bishop.
think
He's a bishop. He's a bishop. Sorry,
what's the difference? Cardinals
I
are
don't think he
just
can
bishops
vote.
with a
I
side
don't think.
job. Cardinals are just bishops
Yeah,
with like
yeah,
with a side hustle. That's what a cardinal is.
yeah, yeah. No, he was a he's a Bishop Dave O'Collins, and oh my God, I so hope that he is as holy of a man as has seemed to come out. It seems like a really just insane, senseless, you know, tragedy that man murdered, shot him,
I think I
and
heard that the man who shot him was like having a psychotic break or something, right? So this wasn't like a
yeah,
crime of like it probably wasn't even premeditated, right? It was like
yeah, it was the housekeeper's husband,
okay.
and so and then I'm just like I'm thinking, oh God, please don't let it come out that there was some scandalous affair with the bishop in the house, all
Yeah.
these just terrible things that like let that not be. Just let this be a real whole. I mean, his whole record just seems so good. His working with the gangs and all of these anonymous works of charity that he was like, like he was making the bishop's salary, but then he's on the side, like paying rent for people,
Wow.
just quiet, like paying people's rent, but like anonymously, like saying, like don't tell anybody, but here's your rent money. Doing things like that. And this only comes out like after people are saying, oh, well, guess what? He was paying my rent. So he was living the life of, they said he was living the life of poverty and this very openness to the community. He just seems like a great, I just really hope he is that's the full picture
Hey,
of him. And
I'm gonna choose to believe that until evidence comes out that he's. But I don't expect any evidence to. So I'm.
yeah, yeah. But so no, so in the immediate aftermath of that, I'm trying following as many of the news stories as I could, just trying to get the updates and everything. Well, one of the videos that pops up is uh there were two that popped up besides the mainstream. So Michael Lofton's video pops up, and then Taylor Marshall's video pops up.
Oh dear.
So so I had to flip a coin. So I went with, I said, well, you know what? I already know what I can just I can already like I already know Lofton's presentation. I said I'm gonna click. I'm gonna see what Taylor's saying. Just see if I can listen to Taylor for 2 seconds. And you know what? Taylor was doing a really nice. He was doing a real nice tribute to the guy.
Oh, good.
And
Okay.
Taylor even did a and Taylor prayed a rosary. And so I said I'm gonna
So
pray.
when Taylor
I'm
Marshall isn't calling for the execution of gay people, he actually has a heart.
yes. And 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 I did see those shorts you made about all that big response to Pope Francis's comments about homosexuality is not a crime and how they everyone lost their minds and and um and 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 so I greatly enjoyed the thing you made where you sort of called him out, but
He called
um
himself out. You know,
yeah,
he
yeah,
he has
really.
some truly disgusting views, Taylor Marshall. He really does.
Yeah, so I would certainly agree with you. And most of the time, when Taylor's having a bad day, I can't take it. I get so I've my blood boils when and it's. But then I will, like I said, I think I said in our one talk how I tune into the traddies just to see what's happening with some of my good friends, that's where they're going to be talking about the real thing that Pope Francis said,
Yep.
because so
Yep.
that's usually what reels me in.
Yeah. Oh, I
Um,
mean, I watch Taylor Marshall's content too. Now, you know, I watch it and I respond to it. So I don't think that and I think I'm very clearly not endorsing his content. Uh, but I'm in there too. I'm giving him views in that sense. So
yeah, but I guess I would say that I want to, I would, and believe me, there's times when my blood really boils, but there's also times when I kind of see where he's coming from, you know, not on the all of the homophobic stuff, um, and a lot of his really strange trad things, but just when he made this one video right after the death of Benedict, where he was sort of going through his history with the Anglican ordinariate and stuff, and just sort of his journey, and I felt like I got a little bit of a window into where he's coming from with his sort of brand of traditionalism. And so I would even so I take this very like warts and all Catholicism approach where I was like, well, yeah, he's going to say some horrendous things, but you know what, he's Catholic. And I'm not going to send him to hell just yet. And
me neither, because
when
I
he
don't
was,
I don't think that such a place exists. But I
yeah,
do think that Taylor Marshall's views are very uh, opposed to the well-being of the human species.
yeah, and but I think some of his, I think some, I would say he's like Hitler. I hope Hitler is in
You
heaven.
said it, not
Okay,
me.
right, right. So I would say there's Hitler, Stalin, Pol Pot, and Taylor
There
Marshall,
you go, the big
and
four.
I hope they're all. I think they all have redeeming quality. I think they all have redeeming qualities. And everybody has a journey, and everybody has a history. And
Oh,
all
I used to say things just like Taylor Marshall. By the way, I
right,
used to say things
and
like that.
I used to, oh my goodness, if I could go back,
Frankly, I said worse
into,
things than that one clip that I highlighted. I used to say some truly terrible things.
yeah, well, so that is just a lesson for us in the in redemption
Hmm.
for the human person. Um, maybe someday, Taylor Marshall will be seeing things the way you know you see them or the way I see them,
That'd be great.
or
Either one. I don't have a preference for either
yeah,
one. Just not where he's at now. That'd be great.
yeah. But when I first discovered Taylor, he was really going after Bishop Barron, and you know how much I love Bishop
That's
Barron,
right. Yeah.
and that was right about the time that I think Bishop Barron had to block him because Taylor made this
I
video
actually
about
didn't know
well
that Bishop
Bishop,
Barron blocked him.
yeah, oh he was really going hard and
Maybe I
just
did
saying
know
some,
that actually.
but and Bishop Barron never said this because Bishop Barron is super professional and
Yeah,
cool,
he
you know.
is. Yeah.
His whole thing is, in fact, he's too professional, you know. He's just a little too professional, um, but really, you know, so Barron's not going to get in. He's not going to be dragged down to the fray. But Taylor was really going hard after, and so but Taylor said, "Oh yeah, well Bishop Barron had to block me because I was, you know," and
Couldn't handle the
you know,
truth or something.
I can well I say yeah I can sympathize with good Bishop. Um, so so my Catholicism is, you know, in fact, even from a Vatican II standpoint, okay, I'm even broader than all Catholics are Catholic. You know, I'm all. I think so. Someone was saying something about the uh, someone was making a point recently, and it may have been one of your, it could have been anybody, but about how we, you know, in the West, we always look at this timeline of the family tree of the churches. You know, it starts out with a single line, and it's the Catholic Church, and then in 1052 or whatever the year 54,
Orthodox line.
you know,
Yeah.
and then there's all this, but there's the line that breaks off, right? It's the
Right.
Orthodox kind of go off in a line,
Yeah.
and then further on down, then the whole Protestant, the Lutherans, and then this huge branching flowering of a tree comes up, and then someone made a point. Well, you know that in the East, the Orthodox have this same diagram, but the Orthodox is the
Yes.
line,
Yeah.
and the Catholics. So for me, I say the I see it more as a why, because I have a very Vatican II, very John Paul II view of the church as, um, you know, the two lungs of the church, east and west. Okay, so for me, it's more of this line that it becomes a why, and the east and the west sort of why off. Although I think it's a slightly asymmetrical why, just because of Peter. Okay, but because I'm Catholic. Okay, it's just slightly
You're
favored.
legally obligated to say that. I think there's your can't excommunicate him now. Look, he said that the Y is in favor of the Catholic Church, so
It's slight,
leave him
but yeah,
alone, Michael
but
Lofton. Leave him alone.
yes, please. Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, I don't want to be drift into material or formal heresy,
That's
please.
right. That's right.
Um, but hey, I'm appealing to John Paul too. You know, I'm appealing to John Paul too. The church must breathe with both of her lungs. Okay, but then I would even, you know, very much in the spirit of Vatican too. I would even embrace all of Christianity. You know, within the Catholic Church, uh, just because that's they came out of it. Okay, and I think, you know, for me, Vatican II really opened the door for both the East and all of and also for Protestantism to be welcomed back into communion. And I think that in Vatican II, the East and the the Protestant movement was at least invited back and sort of welcomed back. Now, obviously, um, stuff has to happen. It's not like we're just saying it's all good. You know, you're all good and come on back in. All the Baptists, all the Pentecostals, you know, oneness Pentecostals that don't believe in Trinity, and you know, just we're all good, we're all happy, and we're all Catholics now. But there's certainly an openness to this, and very much, um, very much in just in the spirit of Vatican II. Um, there's a certain legitimacy to, we no longer say, we no longer use the language of heretics and schismatics. Okay, we just speak of people who are not in full communion, or we speak of separated brethren. Okay, and maybe the trads still do,
Because the trads
but
do, for sure.
yeah, but so that's my appeal. So that's going to be my appeal to you. This is something I hear. This is when I always want to jump through my screen and in all of your talks, um, where anytime you ever get into, the discussion of, can I ever be Catholic again, and blah blah blah, and can I be, and can I be what is it to be an Orthodox Catholic? So I so so my pushback on this is, I think there is, I think there's maybe an undue weight given to the the trad strand of the church. So for me, you know, so I think I, am a very robust, that I personally have a very robust Catholicism. And I think I am fully in harmony with the living church right now. I mean, I'm fully in harmony with Francis, with Vatican II, um, with the local churches. I mean, everything. It's like I should be the poster child for the model Catholic, Um, but I also know that probably a lot of people in the trad community, and none of them know who I am unless they watch your show. But I mean, people like me, people like Father Casey, people like James Martin, um, people like Bishop Barron. Although Barron's, he
He's
might be
50-50.
making a little bit of a traditionalist turn here.
Yeah.
And I think maybe I think I just think he's maybe scandalized by the culture wars, like so many people are right now,
Could be.
and that's driving him, which is somewhat what happened to Joseph Ratzinger himself. He was like a great Vatican II, which he still here. And I love Joseph Ratzinger. To me, Joseph Ratzinger gets such an unfair rap.
Before we start
Um,
Joseph Ratzinger, I should say I actually have to go feed my cats. I don't know if you can hear them, but
yeah.
they're all yelling at me.
Well, I see them
Oh,
coming
good,
for.
good.
So anyway, well, that was an interesting talk, which we got into nothing, which I
I know that's what I
planned
was just
to.
gonna say. We had like a whole bunch of topics in mind, and we wound up covering half of them, kind of. But the conversation just took on, which is a good thing, right? That's how a conversation is supposed to be.
Well, I want it to be an organic, but I think everything we talked about was somewhat productive
I
and
Yes,
relevant.
yes, I agree. I agree.
So
I think it was a good one.
I guess all I can say is put me on this. I want to be the record holder. So just uh, put me on the list for the next time, and we'll do another one. And happy Lent, happy non-Lent, happy quasi-Lent,
I thought you
happy
were gonna say Kwanzaa for a
non-trad-Lent.
second. I was like, wait a minute. Yes, happy Lent to all my Catholic listeners, and happy non-Lent to all of you non-Catholics. All right, Daniel, thank you so much for coming on again, and we'll have you back on soon so that you could be the number one most returned visitor.
Oh, that would just so
We'll do it. We'll do it.
that's when I will have lived.
All right, cool. Well, Daniel, we'll talk to you again soon.